We both understood that what was happening wasn't right, but the tension between us was too powerful to ignore, and as our desire grew stronger, lines blurred and boundaries vanished. What began as simple curiosity quickly turned into a forbidden passion neither of us could resist. It all began on a rainy afternoon, one of those days where boredom seems to weigh heavily in the atmosphere. My stepmother, Megan, had returned home early from work, and the house was quiet except for the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. I had recently turned 23, and although I had always viewed her as my father's wife, something had changed between us. I couldn't quite understand it, but there was an undeniable tension, an unspoken energy in the air whenever we were alone. Megan, in her late 40s, was still stunning, able to turn heads wherever she went. The way she moved gracefully, the way her lips curled into a gentle smile, and the subtle scent of her perfume always caught my attention. I had tried my best to ignore it, to push away the thoughts that would creep in whenever she passed by, but recently it had become increasingly difficult. There was something in the way she looked at me, something different, and I couldn't help but wonder if she felt it too. That afternoon, the rain seemed to intensify the strange energy between us. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels absent-mindedly, when Megan entered the room. She was dressed simply, in a white blouse and jeans, her hair still damp from the rain. I tried not to stare, but my eyes were drawn to her every move, the way the fabric hugged her curves, the delicate line of her collarbone visible under the loose neckline of her shirt. She glanced at me with a curious smile. "You look bored," she said softly, sitting down next to me on the couch. The nearness of her body sent a wave of heat through me, and I shifted slightly, hoping to conceal the reaction my body had to her proximity. "Yeah, just a slow day," I replied, trying to keep my voice casual, but I could feel it the way the air seemed to thicken between us, the unspoken tension crackling like electricity. I noticed her gaze drifting toward me, and for a moment our eyes met. There was something in her expression, something more than curiosity, and it made my heart race in a way I hadn't anticipated. But Megan leaned back, stretching her arms over the back of the couch, causing her blouse to tighten slightly across her chest. I tried to avert my eyes, but they were drawn to the subtle movements of her body, the slow rise and fall of her breath. My mind was racing, filled with thoughts I knew I shouldn't be having, but I couldn't stop myself. The more I fought it, the stronger the desire became. After a few moments of silence, Megan's voice broke through the quiet. "You seem distracted," she said softly, her eyes locking onto mine with a knowing look. There was a playful edge to her tone, something that made my stomach flip with a mix of excitement and anxiety. I didn't know how to respond. Should I laugh it off, or admit the truth that the only thing distracting me was her? Instead, I said nothing, hoping the silence would fill the space where words couldn't. But Megan wasn't the type to let things slide. She leaned in closer, her hand resting lightly on my knee. The touch was innocent enough, but the warmth of her palm against my skin sent a shockwave through me. I could feel my pulse quicken, my heart pounding as her fingers traced slow, small circles on my leg. "Are you sure everything's okay?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper now, her face just inches from mine. Her breath was warm against my cheek, and the faint scent of her perfume was intoxicating. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "Yeah, I'm fine," I managed to say, though even I could hear the hesitation in my words. She didn't pull away, her eyes still fixed on mine, waiting, searching. The tension between us was impossible to ignore now, a pull that neither of us seemed willing to resist. But then, in one slow, deliberate movement, Megan's hand slid higher up my thigh. The touch was gentle, almost as if she was testing, waiting for me to stop her. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body was betraying me, my mind clouded with thoughts of what I wanted, what I knew was wrong but couldn't deny any longer. Her fingers brushed against the edge of my pants, and I stiffened, a wave of heat rushing through me. Megan's eyes widened slightly, her gaze flicking downward for a brief moment before returning to mine. The look on her face, a mix of shock and something more intense, was unmistakable. "Well," she whispered, her voice low and sultry, "that's unexpected." I felt my face flush, embarrassment mingling with the overwhelming desire that had been building inside me for weeks, months, maybe even years. I tried to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. And then, before I could react, Megan's hand moved again, this time with more purpose, more intent. Her fingers traced the outline of my growing arousal through the fabric of my pants, and I inhaled sharply at the sensation. She leaned in even closer, her lips just a breath away from mine. "Is this why you've been so distracted?" she teased, her voice barely audible, a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I have to say, I'm surprised. I could feel the heat radiating from her body, the closeness of her presence overwhelming every rational thought in my head. I had wanted her for so long, and now she was here, touching me in ways I had only imagined. Her breath was hot against my skin, her hand exploring, teasing. Megan's fingers curled around the waistband of my pants, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. I was fully aware that we were stepping over a line one we should never cross, but the attraction between us was far too intense to resist. Her lips brushed my ear as she whispered, "Do you want me to stop?" The question lingered in the air, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped. Deep down, I knew the answer, even though I couldn't voice it. I didn't want her to stop. I didn't want this moment to be over. Every nerve in my body was alight, every part of me craving her touch, yearning for the release only she could provide. Instead of speaking, I reached for her, my hand finding the curve of her waist and pulling her closer. The moment our bodies met, it was as if a floodgate had opened, and all the tension, all the unspoken desire, washed over us in a wave of passion that neither of us could control. Megan's lips found mine in a deliberate, slow kiss, filled with a hunger that mirrored my own. Her hand slid under the waistband of my pants, her fingers wrapping around me with a confidence that left me breathless. I groaned into her mouth, the feeling of her touch sending shockwaves through my body. She pulled back slightly, her eyes dark with desire as she gazed down at me. "I had no idea," she murmured, her voice trailing off as she took in the sight of me, her hand still holding me, teasing and exploring. "You've been keeping this from me all this time. I could hardly think clearly, let alone form a response." My mind was clouded with desire, my body aching for more of her touch, more of the pleasure that only she could give. Sensing this, a slow smile spread across her lips as she leaned in again, her breath hot against my neck. "Let me take care of you," she whispered, her hand now moving with more urgency, her fingers stroking me in a way that made my whole body tremble. I could feel the tension building, the heat coiling tight in my stomach, but I didn't want it to end just yet. I wanted to savor every moment, every touch, every kiss. We moved together in a rhythm that felt so natural, as if we had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Megan's hands roamed freely, teasing and driving me closer to the edge with every caress, every stroke. My body reacted to her in ways I had never experienced, every nerve alive with pleasure. Her lips trailed down my neck, over my chest, leaving a burning path behind. Her breath on my skin, her body pressed against mine, was almost too much to bear. I needed her more than I had ever wanted anything before. Just when I thought I couldn't handle it any longer, when I was on the brink of release, Megan pulled back. Her eyes locked onto mine with a mischievous glint. "Not yet," she whispered, her voice low and sultry. "We're not done." My heart pounded in my chest as I realized what she meant. She wasn't going to let this end too soon. She wanted to draw it out, to make me wait, to tease me until I was begging for release. And in that moment, I knew I was completely at her mercy. Megan's eyes held mine, and the teasing smile on her lips told me she knew exactly what she was doing. My pulse raced, my body tense with desire, but she wasn't going to let me have what I wanted, not yet. She wanted to take her time, to enjoy every second of this forbidden game we were playing. And though I was desperate for her touch, I couldn't help but be captivated by the game she was orchestrating. Her movements were slow and deliberate, her fingers grazing my skin as though memorizing every inch of me. Her touch was light, teasing, but it sent jolts of pleasure through me with every stroke. I could feel her breath on my chest, warm and soft as her lips hovered just above my skin, never quite making contact. It was an exquisite kind of torture, and the more she held back, the more I craved her. "You're so tense," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Relax, let me take care of you." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing as her hand slid slowly down my stomach, her fingers brushing against the waistband of my pants once again. My body reacted instantly, a low groan escaping my lips as her fingers traced along the length of me, still teasing, still withholding the full touch I so desperately wanted. She smiled at my reaction, her eyes flicking up to meet mine, dark with desire. "Patience," she whispered, leaning in to kiss my neck, her lips soft and warm against my skin. The sensation sent shivers down my spine, and I tilted my head slightly, offering her more access, silently pleading for her to continue. She obliged, her kisses slow and deliberate, her breath hot against my skin as her lips moved down my neck to my collarbone. I could feel the heat building between us, the tension winding tighter with every passing second. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer, but she resisted, her body hovering just above mine, teasing me with her closeness without giving me what I so desperately craved. It was maddening, and yet I couldn't get enough of it. Finally, her lips returned to mine, and the kiss that followed was slow and sensual, filled with a passion that left me breathless. Her hand moved again, this time with purpose, her fingers slipping beneath the waistband of my pants, fully wrapping around me. I gasped at the sensation, my body responding immediately to her touch. I saw the satisfaction in her eyes as she felt my reaction. "Is this what you wanted?" she whispered against my lips, her voice low and sultry. "Yes," I breathed, barely able to get the word out as her hand moved in slow, deliberate strokes. The pleasure was almost unbearable, and yet I didn't want it to end. I wanted her to keep going, to push me further, to make me wait until I couldn't take it anymore. Megan seemed to sense exactly what I was feeling because she slowed her movements again, drawing out the pleasure with agonizing precision. Every inch of my body was alive with sensation, as if set on fire, as her skilled hands explored me. At first her touch was light, playful, but soon it became firmer, more intentional. With every movement, I felt myself edging closer and closer to the brink. My breath was heavy now, and my hands gripped her waist as though my life depended on it. The tension inside me was building, a tight knot of pleasure coiling tighter with each stroke, but just when I thought I couldn't hold out any longer, she stopped. I opened my eyes, meeting hers, and the mischievous smile on her lips told me she wasn't done with me yet. "Not so fast," she whispered, leaning in to kiss me again. Her lips were soft and warm against mine. "I want this to last," and with that, she stood up abruptly, leaving me lying there, desperate for her touch and aching for release. I watched as she slowly unbuttoned her blouse, her movements deliberate, as though she were performing just for me. The fabric slid off her shoulders, revealing her smooth, soft skin, and I caught my breath at the sight. Megan smiled, clearly pleased with the effect she was having on me. Next, she slipped off her jeans, her hips swaying as she stepped out of them, leaving her in nothing but lacy panties and a matching bra. She was stunning, and the sight of her standing there, so confident and in control, only fueled the fire burning inside me. She walked toward me slowly, her hips swaying with each step, and when she reached the bed, she climbed on top of me, straddling my hips. The warmth of her body pressed against mine, and I groaned as she shifted her weight, teasing me with her closeness, but withholding what I craved most. Her hands rested on my chest as she leaned in, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "Do you want me?" "Yes," I breathed, my voice thick with desire. "How much?" she asked playfully, her lips grazing the sensitive skin of my neck. More than anything, I confessed, my hands sliding up her back to pull her closer. She smiled against my skin, her breath warm and sweet, as she whispered, "Then show me." That was all the encouragement I needed. My hands found the clasp of her bra, unfastening it effortlessly, and she let it fall away. Her body pressed against mine, and we kissed again, a heated, passionate embrace. The feel of her bare skin on mine was almost too much to handle, and the tension inside me began building again, stronger than before. Megan shifted her hips, teasing me with the friction between us, and I moaned into her mouth, my body aching for more. Her hands were everywhere, touching, teasing, pushing me closer to the edge with each caress. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, she finally relented, sliding her panties down and positioning herself over me. The moment we came together, it was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. The pleasure was overwhelming, and I could feel every part of her as we moved in perfect harmony. But the tension that had been simmering between us for so long was finally unleashed, and I was lost in the sensation of her skin on mine, the sound of her breath in my ear as we reached the peak of our passion. We moved together in a rhythm that felt both natural and intoxicating, each motion bringing us closer to the edge. My hands gripped her hips, guiding her as she moved above me, and I could feel the heat radiating from her body, the way her breathing quickened as we neared the climax. Then, in one breathtaking moment, we both reached the height of our passion, our bodies trembling together as we were overtaken by waves of pleasure. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before, and in that moment the world around us disappeared. There was only her, only us, entwined in the most intimate embrace. For what felt like an eternity, we stayed like that, wrapped around each other, our breaths gradually returning to normal as the intensity of the moment began to fade. But even as the passion subsided, the connection between us lingered, stronger than ever. Megan looked down at me, her eyes soft, filled with something deeper than just desire. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair away from my face as she whispered, "I had no idea it could be like this." Neither did I admitted, my voice still shaky from the experience. She leaned down and kissed me gently, and I knew in that instant that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. There was something more between us now, something profound, something we could no longer ignore. And as we lay there, our bodies still entwined, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again.